how about the job that Jim has done at Ripon? Continues to raise the bar. It's pretty amazing, Jim. You just keep taking this to new heights. Congratulations.
So only because of my leaders.
Yeah, right. What a pleasure it is for me to introduce our speaker today, Steve Scalise, our Majority Whip. We share a common bond. We are both of Italian-American heritage. Thank you. Three of us in the room. And I don't know what it took because, you know, how long have I been chairman or co-chairman of this group now?
5 years.
And I think this is the first Italian lunch we've had, Steve. So thanks to you, obviously, that we had an Italian-themed lunch today. So we do appreciate that. Congressman Scalise was first elected in a special election. Some of you may remember that in May of 2008. After 4 more successful re-elections, today he's in his 5th term in office, having emerged as one of the most important conservative voices and pillars of our Republican conference. He's known as a strong leader who's advocated for principles of fiscal discipline, lower taxes, a national energy policy, ethics reform, strong national defense, and traditional family values. Before becoming the Majority Whip last year, you all know that Mr. Scalise served as chairman of the Republican Study Committee, and under his leadership grew its ranks to over 170 members of our conference. Prior to his election to Congress, Mr. Scalise was a member of both the Louisiana State House and State Senate from 1996 until 2008. He served in multiple chairmanships and committees in both of those chambers. And it's important to note that Mr. Scalise is a proud graduate of the Louisiana State University Tigers, yep, and a 2-time speaker of LSU's Student Government Association. I will tell you, it was a very fun day on January 1st that I had in SEC country. I understand you were on vacation outside the state, but it was.
Alabama, so we'll give you that.
In fact, Steve and I haven't talked about this. In the suite that I had an opportunity to be in was a supporter of yours and a Louisiana State guy as well, and he was all but too happy to be cheering against Alabama, I will tell you, on that particular day. So it is with great pleasure and even more importantly, great pride that I introduce to you our Majority Whip, Steve Scalise.
Pat, thanks for braving the weather and managing through this blizzard to be here. And my paisan and friend, we enjoy eating the ravioli together, and want to thank Ripon, especially Jim, for his leadership and what Ripon represents. I know we've worked together on a lot of things. We had the roommate luncheon a few years ago, and we're still giving our landlord friend a hard time about the rent being too high. But we've been very busy the last few weeks, the last few months, and I think when the House majority grew in size, and then we got majority in the Senate, we realized we're going to have some great opportunities to move and advance the agenda that we've had, that we've been pushing through the House, and Pat's worked on a lot of these bills. A lot of us advanced bills to get the economy back on track, to try to help spur job creation and solve some of the problems that our country's been facing. And so many of those bills just went nowhere, and people across the country don't see Congress taking up issues because they don't see the House and Senate moving bills simultaneously. And I think there was a shift in the country where they said, we want to give this an opportunity, give people a chance to go and see if y'all can move bills through Congress to the President's desk, and hopefully get back to a place where we can have Washington function and can work for real people. And in the Whip's office, of course, we're most directly tied to ensuring that when a bill is going to come up on the House floor that is something that the majority wants to advance, that it's going to have the 218 votes to pass. And so, you know, a lot of people have asked, you know, about what is your style as whip, and you know, I guess, you know, when I became whip, it was a big milestone, and a lot of people back home were excited about it, and you know, and then I became the answer on a Jeopardy question yesterday, and I got texts from people that didn't have any concern that I was the whip. They just were ginned up on that. And one of my college roommates was actually a contestant on Jeopardy, so when Jim read that question, my phone was blowing up yesterday. It was the Daily Double, by the way, and the contestant that answered got it right, so I was glad about that. She made like $5,000 and went into first place, so it was a good day all around. But I like to say every day's a good day. You know, when you look out the window and you see the Washington Monument, no matter how bad your day is, you know, you gotta appreciate what that's all about, and just how historic this opportunity is for us to be able to go and solve real problems. And so, you know, as whip, one of the things I've tried to do is to bring different groups of members in to keep the pulse of where the members are, and to try to anticipate problems before they happen. And you know, we've worked on a lot of very heady issues. We've had immigration, which is a very complex issue for our conference, for the country as a whole, and we've been able to pass some good bills on immigration out of the House. We've dealt with the proper funding of government. We've, you know, we're going to be taking up a number of other bills in the weeks ahead, and we've dealt with a lot of economic issues and jobs and energy issues. And if you look at where we are, we just had a retreat a few weeks ago, and one of the things that I presented, because each of the leaders gives a presentation. We had the Senate there with us too, and we had over 200 members of the House at the Republican conference retreat, and we had over 45 members of the Senate that came, which I thought was very historic, that you had the House and Senate there together. I thought it was not only a good symbol, but it was a good opportunity for a lot of us to build even stronger relationships with senators. Of course, a lot of the House members that have gone over to the Senate over the years, we stay in touch with. But there are a lot of senators that House members have never even met before. And the senators were not just all hanging out by themselves. They were actually talking to and sitting by and you know, really getting to know a lot of the House members. And I think that bodes well for a good ability for us to advance the things that we think are important to get the country back on track and to be successful at it. Because I think people have been frustrated with the slow pace over the last few years. And so if you look just out of the box, you know, we're in our third week. Our first week, we passed the bill on Keystone Pipeline. Bill that couldn't get to 60 votes last year, got to 59 famously, and never could cross that burden. And all of a sudden, they break 63. They bring the bill up to the floor, and now in the third week, they're hopefully coming close to wrapping it up. And it shows you just how long it takes over the Senate, how different their chamber is. A bill that took us maybe 5 hours on the floor to pass out of the House with a large bipartisan vote. Is now in its third week and still being debated, but I think one number that's really interesting is the number 28. Yesterday marked 28 different amendments that have been voted on by the Senate, just on one bill, on Keystone. 3 of them have already passed. You know, they'll take up more. We'll see what the bill ultimately looks like. But the fact that they processed 28 shouldn't be something that excites everybody, except you look at the fact that that's more amendment votes than the entire 2014 calendar year the Senate took. So on one bill in 3 weeks, the Senate's already had more amendments on the floor that have been voted on by their members than the entire calendar year 2014. And that really shows you what the disconnect was last year. You know, whether Harry Reid thought he was going to protect all of his vulnerable members by not having them vote on tough votes, frankly, the fact is that pretty much all of those vulnerable members lost anyway, and they didn't take up any of those issues. They didn't have any of those tough votes. And I think it shows you, people want us to go make tough decisions. They want us to make the tough decisions. And they're hungry for that kind of bold leadership. You know, all of us make sacrifices. You know, Pat was in Ohio, loved to stay home with his family. My son yesterday had his first soccer game. He's 5 years old. I'd have loved to have been at Harrison's soccer game last night. But we sacrifice and we come up here because we believe passionately in what needs to be done to get our country back on track. And all of our members feel that way. And to deny them the opportunity to go and engage in that debate and bring these issues forward and confront the challenges that our country's facing that, frankly, they expect us to confront. That's what we're here to do. And we can all go back home and explain what it is that we're working on. But if you're not confronting those challenges, that's where you're going to have trouble. And I think the fact that you look at that number of votes that the Senate's taken, you know, some people say, oh, they had to take some hard votes. Well, you know what? That's why we're here. And so I think it's encouraging if you look at where we are, where we're headed, and some of the things we talked about in our retreat. And what I wanted to lay out to our membership was exactly how we get bills through the process and ultimately onto the president's desk, because that's the real objective, is to advance bills that solve these problems that people are facing and get them on the president's desk, and hopefully he signs them. Hopefully he wants to be more like Bill Clinton than an ideologue, and he wants to work with the Republican Congress. And look, they never wanted, all these candidates that were in tough races, nobody wanted Barack Obama in their district because of where his popularity is. But everybody wanted Bill Clinton. Well, why is Bill Clinton popular still to this day? Because he balanced the budget, he got the economy moving again, he did welfare reform. All those were ideas that he didn't support initially. And so what I wanted to do is show our members just what it looks like to have a Republican House and Senate with a Democrat president, how you can still accomplish big things. And I use the model of welfare reform, because still to this day, almost 20 years after it was signed by President Clinton, that's still considered one of the great conservative achievements. We're able to reform a mandatory entitlement program, and we actually helped get people out of poverty. They didn't start that back in the 90s, and they didn't put it in the contract with America because they said, you know, let's get these green eye shades on and see how we can save a lot of money. It absolutely saved a lot of money. $54 billion was the savings that was attached to it. But what was more significant is that they saw that there was a program, a federal program that had been going on for decades that wasn't achieving its purpose. It wasn't helping people get out of poverty. In fact, many would argue, and you could show with data, that it increased poverty. And so welfare reform comes and passes, and they said all these demonistic things about how it wouldn't work, how it was going to hurt people, and what was the result? We can actually go and look at it. 50% drop in welfare caseloads, but you had a almost 2/3 increase in mothers who had never been married before that got into the workforce, kids that got out of poverty. That's what welfare reform was all about. It actually helped people, help pull people out of poverty. But it was a fight, and I wanted to show the members, because over 90% of our conference was not there when welfare reform went through. And when those kind of big things got done with a divided government, Republican House and Senate, and Democrat president. So we'll walk through the whole process. It took 1.5 years from when the bill was originally filed in January of '95 until it was finally signed into law in 2006 in June. And it was a great achievement, but to see all of the iterations of changes, the first veto that was done through reconciliation, which shows why it's important to have a budget, and us to do a budget not only in the House as we've done for the last 4 years, but to actually have a willing participant in the Senate where we can get a reconciliation process in place, and how that actually helps us advance good conservative policy to the president's desk. They use that reconciliation process to get welfare reform to the president's desk. And just to show that it takes discipline, it takes focus, and it takes a real relentless ability to pursue your objectives. And they did that. And it wasn't easy, but ultimately they had a focus, and they said, we're not going to stop working until we get it done. That kind of persistence is how you actually change this country for the better. And so for our members that haven't seen that process before, I think it's important that we go and reflect back on how we did great things so that we know how to continue to do great things. And we've got a lot of those opportunities. And again, you can just see with this first vote that's coming on Keystone, it's an opportunity to get a bill to the president's desk that creates over 40,000 jobs. There's a bill we're going to be taking up tomorrow on LNG exports. I've seen it in South Louisiana. The first LNG export facility in the country that's been permitted is the Cheniere facility out in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I went and toured it. There's billions of dollars of private investment to build that facility. And there's billions more in private investment to create more facilities like that with 70,000, 80,000 jobs by some estimates that would come from that. And yet we've got this permitting process that makes absolutely no sense. And the Department of Energy can take all the time they want, and you can have all the financing, but if you're behind a couple of projects that have absolutely no financing in the queue, then you're just going to sit there and wait. Maybe by the time you come up, the financing's gone. That's a ridiculous process that's killing jobs in this country. So we have a bill that says you're going to have a shot clock on the federal bureaucrats. You know, in private industry, you're given timelines on everything from when you have to file taxes to when you have to comply with certain regulations. And yet the administration, if you do everything right, fill out all your paperwork and turn it in, you could wait for years. And so we tell the agency that's not acceptable. You have 30 days to give a decision. and let's get billions of dollars more investment moving in our economy. There's so many good examples like that of bills that have, by the way, bipartisan support. These are not partisan issues. There are clearly some partisan issues, and we're going to work through those too. But there are a lot of bipartisan issues to get the economy moving again that you just never saw Congress confront, because even if the House passed a bill and we had 50, 60, 70 Democrats on it, it never went anywhere in the Senate. And so for most people in America who want us to solve these problems, they never saw it happen. And they never saw that bill get to the president's desk. And that's going to change. It's going to change for the better for this country. And so we wanted to show the members just how it can be done, because we want to do it again. We want to replicate that successful model over and over again in the next 2 years and lead into the presidential race where people actually start seeing what those bold ideas we have are and how they're going to help real people not only get out of poverty, but be able to achieve the American dream, be able to move up and be able to advance in their lives and address the problems that they really care about. So that's what we're going to be working on. I'm excited about that opportunity. It's not going to be easy, but that's the great part of what we get to do, is we get to come up here and confront these challenges and work with people. Sometimes you have disagreements with people, but at the end of the day, you work through the problems and you get them solved, and then you move on to the next ones. And there are more than enough of them for us to work on. So, appreciate what the Ripon Society does to highlight these. And we had the hearing with the FCC last week. Appreciate y'all sending that out, because I think it's a frightening thought to a lot of people that, for one of the great successful sectors in our economy, the technology sector, it's grown, and my degree's in computer science, so I've always said one of the reasons the technology sector's done so well is because government hadn't figured out how to slow it down and regulate it to where it can succeed. And yet here you got the FCC coming in and saying, you know what, the internet is working so well, we're going to fix it. And my God, that shivering thought that goes through people, and the billions of dollars of private investment that can freeze up, the jobs that will be created that we'll never see if you have the government come in with a heavy hand and do things the wrong way. And so what we said was, let's take a different approach. Let's look at this the right way. And hopefully we see a lot more opportunities like that too. So I know we're going to take some questions, so I will stop talking now and let y'all fire away.
Chairman Tiberi, you can either have the first question or the last question, since you did such a great job introducing our whip. All right,
But
very
I get
good.
the last answer if he gets the last question.
Ralph Hellman, thank you very much.
Great. So, Congressman Tiberi, you're a son of Italian immigrants, if I recall, and you're a great-grandson. We're a nation of immigrants. We're proud of our heritage, but we've had this problem with dealing with illegal immigration, and I think Republicans have maybe inappropriately been tagged as anti-immigrant. How do we break out of that? How do we move on immigration reform that's positive, that shows that we're a nation that values legal immigration but might be tough on what's the next step? I know we've got DHS approach. Are we going to move other portions of the immigration reform debate? Or are we just going to be permanently stuck on this battle with Obama on the executive order?
Yeah, I think you're already seeing this process start. And obviously, if you look, immigration's made our country great. And my great-grandparents came here from Italy, and they were indentured servants, worked on a sugarcane plantation in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, in Garyville, actually, where there's an oil refinery there now where that sugarcane plantation was. And they came here because times were tough in Sicily, where they came from, and they wanted a better opportunity, they wanted a shot at the American dream, and there was a legal way to come here that worked really well. And that American dream still exists, and that opportunity, we still want to be there for the next generation of immigrants that are going to help continue to make our country great. But the problem is that the system doesn't work right now. The legal system is very broken. And so what we're working on right now is focusing on fixing the things that don't work on the legal side so that it can function again properly. And the first step is to get back to rule of law. Let's first recognize, we are a nation of laws, and the president can't make up the law. And he acknowledged this himself over 20 times over the years, that he can't unilaterally do what now he's proposed to do in his executive actions. And so we stood up a few weeks ago and passed legislation that was tied to the funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security that says the president can't just make up his own laws on issuing these certificates on amnesty. He's got to work with Congress. He even said so himself 22 different times. So let's get back to that. Now we're working on a border security bill, because you talk to most people across the country, they will, everybody's got their own opinion on various areas of immigration reform, but most people will recognize that the first thing we ought to do is secure the border. Now, let's get back to a system that works again, and you'll eliminate a lot of your other problems on the illegal side if you just go and have a standard rule of the game. And there are millions of people that right now are waiting in line to come to this country legally. We ought to respect that. We ought to celebrate that and actually reward the people that are playing by the rules right now. And it makes it real complicated, and actually makes it harder if you've got a system where going around the rules actually gets you here quicker than playing by the rules. And that's what we're trying to get back to, is that rule of law that functions. And so there are a lot of steps that we want to take, but it starts with just getting back to a normal, functioning, legal immigration system.
Wow. All the way over here, Jameson, go ahead.
Thank you again for the speech. Just had a question. It's for the past 4 years, it seems like it would be easy to fall into kind of this fortress mentality in the House, where it's us against the president, us against the Senate. So most of the actions that we took were probably in some sense to our benefit. So now that we have our friends in the Senate, how do we avoid friendly fire, make sure that we're not doing actions for ourselves at the expense of our Senate colleagues and friends?
Yeah, and this is always going to be a challenge, because there's this natural friction between the House and the Senate, because the bodies are so different. We can move a lot quicker, as was the example of Keystone, just how quickly we can move, just with limitations they've got. They've got to get to 60 votes to do most things. But at the same time, I think this gets to a focus on what we're trying to achieve. And I'll go back to that welfare reform example again, because they could have easily, at so many steps along the way, as the bill went over initially from the House, which had over $300 billion in savings, it had actually a link between TANF funding and Medicaid. It did a lot of devolution to the states to allow states to have a lot more flexibility on Medicaid, which is something we still would like to see today. I think would actually help dramatically improve what's so broken with Medicaid today. But as it went over to the Senate, that all dropped out. And then it came back to the House very different, with a lot less big benefits and savings to people that were being hurt by the old way of doing things. But they never had their internal fights, which they had. They never let them become public. And they kept the focus on getting a bill to the president's desk. Because at the end of the day, if you focus on personalities, that's where you're going to break down. That's where you're not going to be able to accomplish your goals. Because you can always find, I didn't like what this person said, or that person filed an amendment I didn't like. You got to get this out of the realm of personalities and get it to the policy, and focus on your main objectives. You've got core principles you should always be trying to achieve, and as negotiations go on, you keep your focus on getting those core principles intact all the way through the process. But ultimately, our goal should be not just passing a bill in the House, it should be getting a bill that advances our objectives to the president's desk, and then hopefully public pressure builds along the way, as it did with welfare reform. Bill Clinton didn't want to sign it. In fact, vetoed it the first 2 times, only signed the third bill because the vote count increased every step along the way, to where by the 3rd time it passed the House, it had a veto-proof majority. It was a party line vote the very first time out of the House. By the 3rd iteration, public support was building over that 1.5 years, and then it passed with a veto-proof majority, and then lo and behold, the president signs the bill. So let's get the public engaged in this too. And the focus ought to be on the policy. Get the personalities out of it. Let's focus on the policy, and then just work every day, night and day, until we get it done.
Thanks. Following up on that, in terms of getting things to the president's desk and working together and personalities aside, Ambassador Froman's up on the Hill today testifying on the president's trade agenda. Could you share with us just how you think it's going to play out in the House in terms of timing, and with the objective, obviously, of getting something to the president's desk?
Sure. And when the president gave a State of the Union last week, the leaders got to meet with him before the speech, and one of the things I told him was being floated out that he was going to be talking about trade. Clearly, there were a lot of things he said in the speech that I strongly oppose and think would be worse for our economy than where we already are. But trade was one of those areas where there is going to be a lot of Republican support. And, and Pat can obviously talk to this, because a lot of this will go through his committee. But this is going to be a case where if trade passes, if we get a TPA agreement, it's going to be primarily Republican votes in the House that get it across the line. And the president's got a responsibility to go and sell the case to the American people, and frankly to his own party to help deliver some votes to get us there. But if you look historically over past trade agreements, it's been largely Republicans that support free trade, and the Democrats in the House and Senate have been less willing to be there. So I think we've got a great opportunity to work together to get something really good done. I mean, I represent some of Southeast Louisiana, and the Port of New Orleans and the Mississippi River runs through my district. The opportunities we have to export more goods that manufacturers all across our country will benefit from are very significant. But it'll be a strong sell that the president's going to have to make if this is going to work. So I'd sure like to see it happen. I'm happy to help to make it happen. But the president's going to have to do his part too, and this is going to be a good test to see if he can get beyond the political rhetoric and the campaign mode and actually roll up his sleeves and work with us to do something that's going to be tough but really good and important for our country and our economy.
Pat Tiberi, I think you get the last question. Just got the hook from
John, we'll
Yeah.
talk later.
So next season, football season.
All right, so the balls have been properly inflated.
Can LSU top Alabama in the standings?
Absolutely. LSU will win. We're going to have most of our players returning. We've got some better players coming. I was in the Superdome when we won one of our national titles against the Ohio State University, but Alabama, y'all might actually play against us in the national title game as you try to defend, but we will beat Alabama next year, and I think LSU will compete for the national title, and hopefully we can meet each other in that championship game, and we'll have fun.
Joint fundraiser.
At a good Italian restaurant. The tough questions. Thank you very much.
Steve.